I didn't know a simple touch could change the way I saw love, until the night her hand found mine and refused to let go. It wasn't passion that held me there, it was a quiet promise I didn't even realize I'd been waiting for. I met her on one of those evenings that feel ordinary until they aren't. The sun had dipped low behind the rooftops, spilling gold light across the floor of the small community art studio where I volunteered twice a week. I was setting up easels, half listening to the hum of quiet conversation, when she walked in. She didn't announce herself, she didn't have to. There was a calm presence about her that drew attention without effort. She was in her early 40s, maybe, wearing a soft beige sweater and her hair tied back in that loose, careless way that looks both elegant and unplanned. When she smiled at the receptionist, I caught myself noticing the faint lines near her eyes, the kind that only appear from years of genuine laughter. I didn't expect to talk to her. People came and went all the time. But fate, or something like it, had other plans. When one of the stands jammed, I bent down to fix it just as she reached for the same spot. Her hand brushed mine, warm, steady, not rushed. I looked up. She laughed softly, that polite kind of laugh people give when a moment could have been awkward but wasn't. "I'm sorry," she said, voice smooth and calm. "I should have let you handle that." "It's okay," I replied. "I think it was waiting for both of us." She smiled at that, a small, approving smile that made something in my chest tighten. We worked side by side for the next hour, exchanging small talk about the class, her favorite painters, and how she hadn't picked up a brush in years. Her words carried a quiet kind of longing, as though she'd once known beauty closely but hadn't touched it in a while. Every time she leaned forward to examine a canvas, her perfume reached me, faint sandalwood and something citrusy, clean and warm at once. When she laughed, it wasn't loud, but it lingered. She had that kind of voice that stays with you even after silence returns. I tried to focus on cleaning the brushes, but my thoughts kept circling back to her. There was something grounding about her presence, like she'd lived through storms and learned how to stay still in the rain. I found myself wanting to understand that steadiness. As she was leaving, she turned to thank me for helping. I reached to hand her coat, and once again, our fingers met. Just for a second. But it was enough to make the world quiet. Her skin was soft, slightly cool, but the contact carried a strange warmth that settled deep inside me. She smiled again, a real one this time, unguarded. "See you next week," she said, slipping her arm through the coat sleeve. I nodded, though my voice didn't come out. The door closed behind her, and I stood there, holding the memory of that brief touch, unaware that something in me had already begun to change. The days after that first meeting felt different, though nothing had really changed on the surface. I still went to the studio twice a week, still set up the easels and arranged the paints, but there was now a quiet anticipation in everything I did. I told myself it was nothing, that she was just another student, another face among many. Yet, when the studio door opened and she stepped inside again, my chest tightened in that same quiet way. She greeted me with a small wave. "You're here early again," she said, smiling as she set her bag down. "I could say the same about you," I replied. That became our rhythm, easy, almost effortless. She had a calm way of speaking that made even simple things feel meaningful. Between sessions, we'd share small stories. She told me she'd moved to town a few years back after her kids left for college. The house felt too quiet, she admitted, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. I thought maybe painting could fill some of that silence. I listened, not as someone offering sympathy, but as someone who simply wanted to understand. There was no pretense with her, no effort to impress or hide. She carried herself like someone who had already made peace with her imperfections. It was grounding. I started noticing the small details about her, the way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear when she was thinking, how she tilted her head slightly when listening. And sometimes, when she laughed, it was almost as if the whole room softened. One evening, we stayed after class to clean up. The others had already left, leaving behind the faint smell of turpentine and wet canvas. We talked while we worked, her voice echoing gently in the empty space. She reached for a brush at the same moment I did, and our fingers brushed again, light, fleeting, but charged with quiet recognition. Neither of us moved away immediately. Instead, we both smiled, pretending it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Not anymore. "Thank you for helping," she said, placing the brush in the jar of water. "I don't mind," I said. "You make it feel less like work." She laughed softly. That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me all week. The words hung between us, not flirtatious, but warm. Genuine. I could feel her looking at me, and when our eyes met, it felt like time slowed for a moment. There was a softness there, a hint of something unspoken, comfort, curiosity, maybe even trust. As she packed her things, she said, "It's strange, this place feels easier when you're here." I wanted to answer, but all I could manage was a quiet, "Me too." When she left that night, the studio felt emptier than usual. The echo of her voice still lingered in the air, and I realized something simple yet undeniable. I was starting to look forward to her presence, not just because of who she was, but because of how I felt when she was near. It was raining the evening it happened, the kind of rain that softens the world into shades of gray and quiets every sound except its own. The art class had ended early, most people rushed out, umbrellas snapping open in the wind. She lingered, waiting by the window, watching the street turn to a mirror of puddles and reflected lights. "You didn't bring an umbrella?" I asked, pulling on my jacket. She shook her head with a rueful smile. "I didn't think the weather would turn this fast." "Then I'll walk you to your car," I said before I could second-guess myself. She hesitated, just for a heartbeat, then nodded. "All right." We stepped out together under my umbrella. The rain fell steady, whispering on the fabric above us, and our shoulders brushed as we walked. The air smelled of wet asphalt and pine, the kind of scent that feels both cold and comforting. She walked close, careful not to bump me, her hands tucked inside her coat pockets. Halfway across the street, she reached out, her hand finding mine, fingers slipping naturally between mine as if it was the most obvious thing to do. Maybe she just needed balance on the slick pavement, or maybe, and I didn't dare believe it, maybe she didn't want the distance between us anymore. Her hand was warm, firm, and alive with quiet intent. We didn't speak, words would have broken something sacred. Every heartbeat felt amplified in the hush of rain. Her grip wasn't desperate, it was sure, steady, like she wanted me to feel that she was there, and that, for now, this was enough. When we reached her car, neither of us moved to let go immediately. The moment stretched, long and gentle. The rain pattered softly on the roof, the faint mist settling on her hair. She looked up at me with that soft, uncertain expression, the kind that says everything without sound. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was barely above the rain. "For what?" I asked quietly. "For walking with me," she said. "For not making me feel alone." Her fingers still rested in mine. I could feel her pulse through the thin space where our palms met. It wasn't racing, it was calm, rhythmic. And somehow, that calm made the connection feel even more intimate. Finally, she exhaled slowly and let go, her hand slipping from mine like a quiet promise she didn't yet know how to make. I watched her get into the car, the reflection of streetlights glimmering on the wet windshield. As she drove away, the warmth of her touch lingered on my skin, as if her hand had left behind something invisible but lasting. That night, lying awake, I kept replaying it, not the moment she took my hand, but the way she held it. Firm, certain, unhurried. It wasn't about attraction or chance. It felt like understanding, like two people silently agreeing that something between them had quietly begun. For a while, everything between us stayed quiet and unspoken, small smiles across the studio, shared laughter over spilled paint, conversations that drifted effortlessly from art to life. But the world, I learned, has a way of seeing what you try hardest to keep private. It began subtly. A few glances from others when we lingered too long by the sink, whispers exchanged behind half-closed doors. One of the younger volunteers joked one evening, "You two make a good team," with a grin that carried a suggestion beneath it. She smiled politely, but I saw the flicker of discomfort in her eyes. After that, something in her changed. She still came to class, still greeted me with warmth, but the invisible thread between us began to stretch thin. Her laughter was shorter, her gaze more careful. She avoided standing too close, as if proximity itself could be misunderstood. I pretended not to notice, but the silence between us grew heavier. The nights when we used to linger after everyone left, those ended quickly now. She'd pack up her brushes, thank me with that polite tone that felt like a closed door, and leave before I could find words to stop her. One evening, I caught her alone in the hallway, staring out the window at the dusky street below. The fading sunlight outlined her silhouette, calm, beautiful, distant. "You've been quiet lately," I said gently. She didn't turn at first. "I've just been thinking," she murmured. "Maybe I've been spending too much time here." "What do you mean?" She sighed. "People talk. They notice things. I don't want this," she gestured vaguely between us, "to become something it isn't." Her words were careful, but her voice trembled slightly on the last part. I took a step closer but didn't reach for her. "And what if it already is something?" That made her look at me. Her eyes were soft but full of conflict. "You're kind," she said. "And I don't want to ruin that. You're young. You have your whole world ahead of you. I've already lived most of mine." Her honesty hit deeper than I expected. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that what I felt had nothing to do with age or time. But the sadness in her eyes stopped me. "So instead," I said, "you don't have to protect me from what I already feel." The silence that followed was long. The only sound was the faint hum of rain outside and the soft creak of the wooden floor beneath us. Finally, she looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. "You shouldn't care this much." "I already do," I said quietly. For a moment, she just stared at me, as if weighing whether to step closer or walk away. Then she turned back toward the window, her reflection trembling faintly in the glass. That was the night I realized something painful but true: sometimes love doesn't fade because it's wrong, it hides because it's seen. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind of day when the world feels heavy with stillness. I wasn't expecting to see her. The studio was closed, but I had stopped by to drop off supplies. When I walked in, I found her sitting alone at one of the tables, hands wrapped around a cup of untouched coffee, her eyes distant. For a moment, I almost turned back, not wanting to intrude. But something in her posture, the slump of her shoulders, the way her thumb traced circles on the cup, made me stay. "You okay?" I asked softly. She looked up, startled, then smiled faintly. "I didn't think anyone would be here." "I could say the same," I said, pulling out the chair across from her. "Want some company?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that." For a while, we just sat there, the quiet between us filled with the hum of distant traffic and the rhythmic tapping of rain against the windows. Eventually, she sighed. "My daughter left today," she said, voice trembling slightly. "She got a job abroad." I told her I was happy for her, and I am, but it still feels like I've lost something I can't get back. Her words carried the kind of ache that doesn't demand sympathy, only presence. I didn't try to fix it. I just listened. She kept talking about the years she spent raising her kids, about how time moved faster than she ever expected. And as she spoke, her composure began to crumble, her voice breaking in small places where the pain slipped through. When she finally went silent, she stared down at her hands. "I don't even know why I'm telling you this," she whispered. "Maybe because you know I'll listen," I said gently. Her eyes met mine then, searching, uncertain, but open. Something in that look felt different, as if all the walls she'd built had quietly lowered. I didn't reach for her at first, I just stayed still, giving her the choice. And when she finally reached across the table, her hand found mine, not tentative this time, but deliberate. Her fingers intertwined with mine, firm and steady. She held on like she needed to feel something real, something grounding. I could feel her pulse, fast, fragile, human. I turned my hand slightly, letting her know I was there, that I wasn't going anywhere. Neither of us spoke. The moment didn't need words. The warmth of her hand said everything, grief, trust, and something deeper that neither of us dared to name. After a while, her breathing steadied. She leaned back, her eyes soft but tired. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" I asked. "For letting me be seen," she said. As she let go, the echo of her touch lingered, not just on my skin, but somewhere deeper. And in that quiet, I understood something simple yet irreversible. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks. It begins in the silence of two hands that refuse to let go when the world feels too heavy. After that day, nothing between us felt the same, not because anything had been said, but because everything had been felt. Her hand had told me more than her words ever could. But with that closeness came distance, too. The following week, she didn't show up to class. Or the one after that. I tried to tell myself she just needed time. Still, every empty chair where she used to sit made the room feel colder. I kept expecting her laughter to fill the quiet, her voice to cut through the hum of brushes and chatter. But she stayed away. When she finally returned, she carried that composed calm again, the mask she wore when she was trying not to let the world see her heart. She smiled as if nothing had happened, but I could see the fatigue in her eyes. "I've been busy," she said lightly when I asked. I wanted to believe her. Instead, I said quietly, "You've been avoiding me." That stopped her. For a second, her expression softened. Then she looked away. "It's not you. It's everything." We were alone in the studio that evening, the last light of sunset spilling across the wooden floor. I leaned against the table, trying to steady my voice. "If it's everything, then maybe we can face it together." She shook her head, a sad smile ghosting across her lips. "You don't understand. You deserve someone easier. Someone who doesn't come with questions or years attached." Her words were gentle, but they carried the sharp edge of fear. I took a slow breath. Maybe I don't want easy. Maybe I want real. She looked at me then, really looked, as if seeing me for the first time. The tension between us was soft but electric. Neither of us moved, yet the space felt charged, fragile, alive. You don't know what people would say, she whispered. I don't care what they'd say, I answered. I care about how you look at me when you forget to be careful. That line hung in the air like something neither of us knew how to hold. She took a step closer, just one, then stopped, her breath catching. I could see the war playing out behind her eyes, the part of her that wanted to reach for me, and the part that thought she shouldn't. Finally, she exhaled. You think this could work? I think it already does, I said. Her hand hovered between us, not touching, but close enough for me to feel its warmth. You make it sound simple, she murmured. It is, I said quietly. You just have to stop fighting it. The moment stretched until the light faded completely. She didn't step forward, but she didn't walk away either. When she finally turned toward the door, she paused and said, sometimes love means doing the hard thing, even when your heart wants otherwise. And as she walked away, I realized something both painful and true. She wasn't running from me. She was running from how deeply she already cared. Weeks passed in quiet uncertainty. I went through my days as usual, but something inside me felt unfinished, like a sentence waiting for its final word. I didn't know if I'd see her again. Part of me tried to accept that maybe our story had ended in silence, that her absence was the only way she knew how to protect us both. But life, in its quiet mercy, gave us another chance. It was late afternoon when I saw her again, standing by the park across from the studio. The light was soft, filtered through the trees, painting her in shades of gold and amber. She was wearing a long coat, her hair loose this time, swaying gently in the breeze. For a moment, I just stood there, afraid that approaching her would break whatever fragile peace she had found. Then she turned, saw me, and smiled, not the polite smile I'd grown used to, but the kind that came from somewhere genuine. You disappeared, I said when I finally walked up to her. I needed time, she admitted. To think. To breathe. Did it help? She looked away, toward the lake where children were feeding ducks. I don't know, she said softly. But I realized something. Every time I tried to move on, I kept coming back here, back to this feeling I can't quite name. Her honesty caught me off guard. I took a careful step closer. Maybe you don't have to name it, I said. Maybe you just have to let it exist. For a long moment, we stood in silence, the world moving gently around us. The air was cool, but not cold. Then she did something I didn't expect. She reached for my hand again, slowly, deliberately, and intertwined her fingers with mine. This time, there was no hesitation. Her grip was firm, her thumb tracing small, unconscious circles against my skin. I felt the warmth spread through me, quiet but certain. I used to think holding someone's hand was such a simple thing, she said. But with you, it feels different. How so? Like it means something I can't take back. I squeezed her hand gently. Then don't. She looked up at me, her eyes steady and calm, not afraid anymore. Are you sure about this? She asked. I've never been more sure, I said. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. Her smile deepened, soft and peaceful. The tension that had once lived between us melted away, replaced by something warmer, quieter, the comfort of finally choosing what felt right. As we walked together through the park, our hands stayed joined. The world didn't stop, no one stared, and maybe that was the beauty of it, that love, when honest, doesn't need to announce itself. In that stillness, I realized something I'd been circling around for months. She held my hand so firmly it felt like a promise I couldn't break, not because she asked me to, but because I never wanted to. And in that moment, I knew some promises aren't spoken. They're simply held.